Majora's Mask, Chapter 66, Elegy of Emptiness. The Grey Witch looked exactly as she had in Hyrule's wooden shack. Her long, brittle hair framed a ghastly, pale face. She sat, slumped in a chair, atop the secret throne room's tall staircase. Though she wore loose gray robes, her angular bones were still sharp beneath taut flesh and looked fragile as glass. Only her singular golden eye shone with strength. Her face mirrored the mask of truth, which was precisely where the artifact had come from, her corpse. "You're supposed to be dead," Link said, eyes wide. "The mask salesman turned you into a mask." For a moment, the boy expected to have red hair and for Navi to be by his side, but this was not his enemy's past. Tattle and the floating skull of the undead king accompanied him instead. Yet, the Grey Witch sat as if the mask salesman hadn't sold his name to a demon and healed her.
The mask salesman,
Beldam said, laughing again.
Is that what you call the man without a name?
I've got the mask here, Link stammered, pulling out the mask of truth. The old woman shrieked, covering her eye with her old, withered hands.
Don't show that thing to me!
She spat.
My true-seeing eye can't peer into itself. You'd unleash terror beyond imagination.
Link uncertainly returned the mask to his bag. So this mask is you. That memory wasn't a lie. The mask salesman did seal you inside of it. Torches crackled on either side of them, and many stairs still separated him from the witch who should be dead. There's no way you survived. I watched your body fade away.
I'm aware of what you've seen,
said the Grey Witch, straightening herself in her chair.
I am blind to everything but truth, after all.
Another puppeteer? Link thought. Another traitor? He didn't know, but his head spun. Stop avoiding all of my questions, he said. Now. The Grey Witch craned her head around the boy to find the eyes of Ikana. The disembodied head bobbed in place. Its former royal confidence had softened into obedience. The crown's beads dangled without authority.
This one seems a bit impatient,
the witch said.
Would you mind having our parley after his?
Ego shifted uneasily. Of course, but be wary of him. He knows more than he should.
Wise words,
Beldam said.
That I did not ask for. Remain silent until I am ready to speak to you.
She sank back into her chair, and Link tried his best to keep meeting her eye. Is she reading my past even now? Link wondered. If that was the case, she didn't show it.
I assume you have many questions, the crone said, tapping long fingernails on her armrests. As most do who seek my counsel.
We're not here to seek your counsel, Link said in anger. We're here to save Ikana Canyon, which was going just fine until... Until what? Link wasn't sure how to finish that, suddenly realizing the Grey Witch hadn't done anything to hinder them.
So sure of yourself,
the crone said mockingly.
Even without my powers, the sound of your voice alone gives away your doubt. Your time here has been riddled with nothing but grief.
She paused.
No, I shouldn't chastise you. You've been doing my work for me. Well enough.
Your work? Link asked. He tried his best to calm his fury. There's no reason to be so angry, he thought, wondering if the masked salesman would always be a part of him. You came here to save Termina?
I didn't come here, per se. I have always been an inhabitant of Termina.
But the masked salesman found you in Hyrule, Link said. He found you in the shack and healed you with his piano.
That wasn't me,
Beldam replied.
That person is dead. I am merely a shade of her, as your fairy friend over there is a shade of another.
Suddenly, Link's anger fell away to something else. Fear. Beldam knows who Tattle really was? Before Termina? The boy thought. He spared a glance her way, but his fairy refused to meet his eyes. She looked up at the crone, face flushed with the same panic. They could finally have that question answered. All he'd have to do is ask.
Cat got your tongue, hero,
Beldam said. Link swallowed his fear, mastering it. No, I'm fine. He decided that answer wouldn't be fair to Tattle. Answering that question would do nothing but widen the gulf between them. Tattle was her own person, shade or not, and that's all that mattered. I'm just not sure I believe you, Link said, redirecting his focus. If you were a shadow of Termina, you shouldn't remember who you were before. The crone frowned.
I don't lie, you fool of a child. I only see truth. Maybe you should look a little closer to home before you start pointing out liars.
Excuse me? Link asked.
How much do you know about your fairy friend and her past?
The boy heard his fairy chime with uneasiness.
Have you ever wondered where the first Tattle went when she abandoned you? On your second day here as a cursed Deku scrub, where this Tattle was going to go before you shoved her in a bottle.
It seemed the crone was intent on driving a wedge between them anyways. Link's tongue went dry, but he kept his eyes on Beldam. He remembered that moment, so long ago. Tattle had called him useless and left him in the Stockpot Inn 2 days before she died and was replaced by this version of herself. She was going to look for the Skull Kid, Link said.
I'm sure that's what she told you,
the Grey Witch said.
But has she told you about the little boy?
Stop!
Tattle exclaimed.
Shut up!
How quickly did the color leave her face when she saw the moon hanging over Clocktown for the first time?
No!
Tattle flew to block the witch from his view.
Link, please! I never lied to you! I wouldn't! You know that!
Lying by omission,
Beldam continued.
That little story could have made all the difference if...
Stop! Link stepped past his fairy, eyes angry again. Except this time, he had a good reason to be mad. You have no right to call Tattle out like that, just because you have some magic power. If Tattle has secrets from me, that's her call. It's not my place to know everything about her life, and it's not yours either. She owes me nothing, and has saved me too many times to count. We're talking about me and you, not her. Leave Tattle out of this. Silence hung in the air. Link's blue eyes never left the faraway crones, even as she sank back into her chair. Now, as we were saying, Link said, I'm sorry I called you a liar. But if you remember who you were before you were a shadow, that makes you unique. Because every other shadow I've met doesn't remember their pasts, destroyed lands, or other realms, or anything. The Grey Witch took a long time before responding.
My apologies, young hero. There is so little to entertain me here. I have antagonized you needlessly. Bickering will only waste the little time you have left. We're on the same side, after all.
The same side? Link thought. He would see about that.
Now,
the witch said.
What do you know about these shadows of Termina, as you call them?
Link repeated everything he'd learned. They're ghosts of people from other worlds, but they don't remember their original lives. The masked salesman described them as empty husks who are emotionless and aren't real. He remembered Roland, the masked salesman's father, flinging himself wildly around the room, begging to be taken back to Clocktown. I know they can't leave Termina either.
Emotionless husks, eh?
The Grey Witch chuckled, turning to Tattle.
Are you offended by that theory?
Tattle didn't reply, and neither did Link.
Shadow is an interesting choice of words. The people in this realm are shadows, but they are cast by the Tree of Light.
The Tree of Light? In the masked salesman's past, the Grey Witch had mentioned a tree whose bark had provided weapons and instruments to people in dreams across generations. You told the masked salesman that's where the piano came from.
I did, but I also told him the piano is not unique in holding the tree's magic. Us simple Termina folk may be shades of other people, Link, but that tree is here. We were born from its light magic and are bound to it. Were we to ever leave this realm, we'd feel the tree's absence. We'd go raving mad and eventually die. Painfully, which you already knew.
Beldam smiled again. The tree's here, Link asked. In Termina?
Yes. When the masked salesman played the piano and sent me beyond the grave, I knew a shade of myself would appear here. As for why my shadow kept my original person's memory, it's one of the benefits of being me. As I told that nameless man in my shack, I sacrificed a lot over my centuries alive in Hyrule. Every version of me will always see truth, no matter what magic casts its apparition.
So, you are a shadow then? You haven't been going back in time with us?
No, which, pardon my low rule, has been a din-forsaken nightmare. Every time you play the Song of Time, you leave me behind, and the moon crushes me. And because I always remember the truth, every new version of me remembers dying every single moment. The versions of me on those other cycles have all been flattened.
She paused, but Link and Tattle said nothing.
In case you were curious, the moon itself doesn't hurt, but the ceiling caving in and the superheated air are not pleasant. I get bludgeoned and burnt to a crisp before I'm crushed.
I'm sorry.
Oh, save your apologies for those less accustomed to suffering.
Link stopped his train of thought, trying to backtrack to an origin point that made sense. Whether or not this woman was an ally, he would not let her misdirect the conversation. Did you want the masked salesman to send you to Termina? He asked. You made it seem like it was his choice. But it never was it? The crone gave her most wicked smile yet.
If you recall, I was lying crumpled on the floor and unable to move. Him playing that piano was a blessing. I welcomed him to make that choice.
But you wanted him to sell his name too, didn't you? Link asked. You manipulated him. You're the reason the demon Majora exists at all. If he hadn't found you in that shack, Termina would be safe. The Grey Witch cackled.
I didn't create Majora, and neither did the nameless man, but knowing the demon's name, and the man who sold it, would give me an advantage, especially if I played a part in its selling. The demon's birth was inevitable. Better I crafted so I could plot the demon's downfall.
Link took a long time to process everything she'd said. Everything. Every word to the masked salesman in that shack was planned, he thought. She told him what he needed to hear so he would sacrifice his name and send her to Termina. So you're here to stop the demon? Link asked. How? By showing up in Termina, just sit in that chair until someone else does your dirty work for you? Beldam paused.
When I showed up to Termina, I got distracted. There was a bloody war here. I had to stop it before Termina got torn apart, before Majora even lifted a finger.
She leaned forward to look at the king's head. Egos to Ikana, still floating in place, cast his eyes down.
Did you forget one other detail from my story to the nameless man?
The crone asked.
I told him there was one person in all of existence who had been to the Tree of Light in person. I didn't know his identity at the time, but now... well, now he's just a floating head, isn't he?
Link's eyes widened. Egos? You're from outside of Termina too? Yes, Egos said, eyes still averted. Why did you come here? How?
Those old doors aren't the only way into this realm,
Beldam said.
I'll admit that many of Termina's secret entryways are lost to me as well, but how he got here is not important. Shall I confess your sins, or let you do the honor?
Egos remained deadly silent.
Egos was quite greedy back when he had flesh. He wanted to forcibly remove bark from the Tree of Light to create a powerful weapon, and unlike thousands before him, he succeeded. The tree responded by cursing him immediately, turning him into an inhabitant of Termina and binding him to this realm forever.
Link didn't know what to make of that. Then how does Egos remember who he is? The weapon I got from the tree, Egos explained. My staff, it helped me remember some things, who I was and where I came from. Link sighed. Is there anyone else I should know about that's from outside of Termina? Any other masterminds pulling the strings?
The only other person from beyond this realm is not a mastermind,
the Grey Witch said.
You met him, the bean seller.
The boy took a moment to remember his and Tattle's Woodfall adventure. They'd snuck through a cave looking for magic beans, and they'd found a man sitting near the edge of the forest. Wow, Link thought. That was a long time ago.
The one eating the beans who we gave the camera to?
Tattle asked, shocked.
He was a wimp.
An old wizard cursed him to a land far beyond his own as punishment for the bean seller's ridiculous prices. That far beyond land was Termina. I imagine all the boy saw was a beautiful field of flowers when he crossed worlds.
Right, Link said, struggling to recall everything the bean seller had said. He mentioned he was leaving Termina that night. Did he?
No,
the winch answered.
He went through Woodfall into that field of flowers, but when he stepped into those roses and tulips, ashes swallowed him whole. He died in a way very similar to her brother.
The Grey Witch shot her eyes to Tattle.
Such is the fate of anyone who ventures into the wasteland.
I don't want to hear about Tail,
Tattle said, backing away.
Please.
His fairy was shocked into silence again, which is something Beldam seemed unusually adept at accomplishing.
Fine,
the Grey Witch said.
Let's go back to Egos' shameful past then. Surely you don't mind, Your Highness? That is what you came here hoping to be called, isn't it?
Egos bristled.
I didn't come here to be a conqueror.
What else then?
The crone said.
You finally made it to Termina, got your staff, and then the tree turned you into one of us. At what point were you compelled to conquer this entire realm?
Link raised an eyebrow. You conquered Termina? The boy didn't know if he had the mental capacity for this convoluted history. No, Egos exclaimed. I was not a conqueror. I only wanted to find the tree again, so I could reverse this curse. I searched and searched, but finding others to help me was the only way. I couldn't find the tree alone. Beldam laughed.
Hold on. You came out east to the canyon, claimed to be the lost heir of Ikana with your magic staff as proof, and then rallied other poor, gullible shades of the Tree of Light to your cause. Why would you need an army and an entire kingdom to go on a treasure hunt?
I didn't want to be a shadow anymore. I never meant to.
Say what you will, but remember that I only see truth,
the Grey Witch said.
You knew you were stuck here forever. There's no going back from becoming a shadow. You wanted to be king, since your life in Hyrule was all too powerless.
Hyrule? Link asked. How long ago did you leave for Termina? Almost 35 years ago now, Egos replied. I came here for the Tree of Light, and it made sure I could never leave again.
How exactly does a tree curse anyone?
Tattle asked. Egos ignored her. So I spent the next 5 years gathering an army to find it again.
You mean to conquer all of Termina?
Beldam asked. But no matter how hard I tried, I never found it. And then she shows up with an army of Gyros by the 6th year to rival me.
That I did,
the Grey Witch said.
I came here to find and put an end to Majora, but instead found this fool playing Emperor. The Gyro weren't hard to convince to follow me, and the long bloody war of Ikana Canyon ensued. I couldn't let him continue doing Majora's job unwittingly. All the destruction he wrought made Ikana Canyon that much easier for the demon to curse. Long story short, I beat Egos and won his stupid war.
And then you ripped all of us of our flesh and cursed us to stay alive, Egos to Ikana said, trembling.
But an army of skeletons is something I just couldn't pass up,
Beldam teased.
Besides, I never stole your flesh. You know that as well as I, Daniel.
Egos to Ikana bristled again. You said you would never speak my name again, witch. If I am no longer Egos, then...
Yes. All your men would know you as a traitor.
She paused, shaking her head and her unblinking single eye.
Besides, I, more than anyone else, know the power in keeping one's name a secret.
The Grey Witch's eye found Link next, and the boy gulped. Maria. Except thinking her name in front of her felt like speaking it aloud.
So hold up,
Tattle said, finding the courage to speak again.
I'm a little confused here. Let me make sure I have this straight.
She cleared her throat.
Egos, you came to Termina looking for this Tree of Light.
The head nodded, at least as much as a disembodied skull even could.
And you found it. Good for you. But you thought stealing wood from one of the most powerful plants in the world was a good idea. It turned you into a shadow, trapping you here forever. So you used your staff to gather an army to, I don't know, satisfy some weird god complex of yours? Then the masked salesman sends you along, Madam Mrs. Grey Witch or whatever, to create your Termina shadow, which is special because of your magic eye. Then you found an army of Garo to stop him, and when you won, you killed Egos and his men?
I never killed his men,
the Grey Witch said.
Just took their flesh away, and I never turned Egos into a skeleton. He had skin not that long ago.
The fairy sighed.
I'm still feeling a few loose ends here. False King dude?
She spun to Egos.
What didn't happen to your staff?
She broke it.
So much animosity,
Beldam said.
Remember, you have my eye now to help you remember, so you won't lose your true self. I thought we were friends.
Are you two sweet on each other?
Tattle asked, narrowing her eyes. Beldam's cackle turned into a full-on deranged laugh. She practically choked on her own spit as Egos averted his eyes shamefully.
Right. I say, let the freaks date the freaks. The Cyclops and Floating Head are perfect for each other. Now, what does the Skull Kid have to do with all of this?
That question caused Egos and Beldam both to get serious.
He came to Ikana looking to vanquish the giant, the Guardian,
the crone explained.
As I'm sure you're aware, he came to the castle first, but we refused to give him answers.
She paused again, pained by some memory.
When he found out what we'd done here, he decided Egos deserved the same fate as his men. He stripped him of his flesh, and then went to trick Sharp before we could warn him. Sharp led the Skull Kid to the stone tower, and the imp sealed the giant away and flung open the door. The result was a seal that trapped all of our Garo and skeletons from ever truly dying. And he turned our armies against us. We ran to the castle and locked ourselves inside so they wouldn't tear us to shreds.
You couldn't fight off the army you created,
Tuttle asked.
Didn't you turn them into skeletons to begin with? Why couldn't you just use some powerful spell?
It doesn't work like that,
the Grey Witch said.
My own magic is limited to truth-seeing, but my knowledge of the arcane arts far exceeds that.
When she broke my staff, that's what she used to turn my men to skeletons, Ego said. She didn't have a powerful object like that when the Skull Kid came. After the history lesson, a pervasive silence filled the room. They stood together, the floating head, and the boy from Hyrule, and the witch and fairy who were shadows cast by the Tree of Light. Except the head has become a shadow now too, Link thought. He wondered what the differences between a person-turned-shadow and an original inhabitant of Termina were. The masked salesman almost turned me into a shade. Or at least, he assumed almost was the right word. Would Link even know if the masked salesman had succeeded? Would he instantly forget everything and become an entirely different person?
So what are we supposed to do now?
Tattle asked, looking around.
This was a nice chat and all, but I'm guessing we have to go to the stone tower to close the door, free everyone here, save the giant, and then face Majora?
The fairy gasped when she made another realization.
Wait a minute! You said shade, didn't you?
Beldam smiled.
Yes, shade was a shade of a shade. A shadow of me, more precisely. She was my window to the outside world when I desperately needed someone to come save me, which I appreciated very much, you two, thank you. I wish you hadn't blown her up, though. That was uncalled for.
Well, we haven't actually saved you yet,
Tattle said.
Which you should know, as a truth seer, we're gonna play the Song of Time and restart things. You'll be flattened again.
Treating these cycles as useless renditions won't accomplish anything,
Beldam said.
Besides, I am a truth seer, not one who can peer into the future, and I have faith that even the good deeds you do in your past cycles will make a difference.
The silence stretched on again until Beldam finally leaned back in her chair.
Do you have any more questions for me, hero?
Yes, Link said. Do you know where the tree is, since you know everything else? The boy thought he already knew the answer since Egos was still here.
No, I don't,
the crone replied.
But you know as well as I that it will always come to those who need it, in dreams, to provide them with weapons to combat the darkness.
Link realized the extent of Egos' crime only then. Egos wasn't chosen by the tree. He found it and forced wood from its bark, and it responded by trapping him here forever and making him forget. Link opened his mouth uncertainly. What is Termina? The masked salesman thought it was a realm of darkness, filled with shadows, half people cursed to roam aimlessly in their sorrow, but the Tree of Light is here, a plant that's the source of light energy for the whole world, and the people here exist because of it. He tried to piece it together, but couldn't. If Termina's not darkness, what is it? What exactly is going on here? The Grey Witch's smile grew so broad, it disturbed him.
You haven't figured it out yet.
The green-headed boy only shook his head.
Well, hero, I'm afraid that's something you'll have to work out on your own. The Tree of Light's influence is always working through us all, and it will reveal itself to you in time, though your mission remains the same.
Link hadn't expected a different response. Do you think I can really do it? He asked. Do you think I can slay Majora?
I am not a prophet, but I can tell that you've succeeded where I failed. The Ocarina's magic is not foreign to Termina, Link. Part of me believes the Tree of Light provides its heroes with weapons in more ways than dreams.
Part of the tree is my ocarina? Link asked.
Well, yes, with some fragments from a time-shift stone and clay too, but that's not important. You are a hero, Link, and you haven't been corrupted. Yet. In your hands is the fate of Termina, a fate whose importance cannot be overstated.
The praise didn't do anything but make him feel worse. "You're wrong," he thought. "You may see truth, but you didn't see the purple-eyed demon I became. The fierce deity." That golden eye likely read his reservations like an open book, but she gave no recognition of that. Instead, she turned to the false king.
"Egos,"
She called.
would you take Link into the throne room and give him his key to the stone tower? His work in this realm is almost done, as I think is ours.
The floating head gestured for Link and Tattle to return through the doorway. The boy and fairy left the staircase uncertainly. Link wondered if Tattle was also straining her memory for another question. "We might never get another chance for answers," he thought, but Tattle never spoke. Link looked back at the Grey Witch a final time, and she gave him one last shred of wisdom.
The nameless man didn't know what he was saying at the time, but there was truth to his words. You will have to choose between the light and the dark, hero, and much sooner than you think.
The secret passageway's stone slab slid in place behind the empty throne room chair. Tattle, Link, and Egos were once again in the elaborate room that hid the Grey Witch's lair. Tattle's head still rang with her voice and her words. It had been a long time since the fairy had let someone get to her that badly.
It's also been a long time since I've been this traumatized,
she thought.
I deserve a break.
Tattle bristled at the realization that this war to conquer Termina had likely happened in her lifetime. She'd simply forgotten it.
Because I'm a stupid shadow.
The thought, even then, made her tear up, but she swallowed that grief before Link could notice. The two floating minion skulls were still busy arguing over the crimson marble pathway. Squatface turned to see them first, his teeth clattering together. Back from your super secret meeting,
Feeble,
Longface exclaimed. Silence! Egos interrupted. Your king commands you. He dismissed his soldiers to face Link and Tattle again. So, Link said, Beldam says you're supposed to give us a key? Oh, not a key, Egos said. A song. To return light to this land, you must seal the doors of a stone tower where the winds of darkness blow through. But Stone Tower is an impenetrable stronghold. Hundreds of soldiers from my kingdom could not even topple it.
And this song will make us stronger than hundreds of soldiers?
Tattle asked, letting sarcasm do its work to mask her feelings. A smile flickered in Egos' glowing eyes.
Daniel,
she reminded herself.
Not Egos.
Would he ever accept his true identity again? This song will grant you a soldier who has no heart, one who will not falter in the darkness. The next time Egos opened his jaw, it was to sing. The skull bobbed up and down as it did, its eyes flashing with each note. The song was as dark and empty as the land of Ikana. Link retrieved his ocarina and played along. Tattle, musically inept as always, listened. Each note seemed darker than the last, and soon Link and Egos were harmonizing as one. Before the song finished, Tattle noticed the fancy goddess magic first. Her friend began to glow. Link didn't seem to notice as he kept playing the song and became a brilliant shade of emerald green. Tattle stammered, wondering if she should interrupt. The Ocarina of Time had done all sorts of inexplicable things, but glowing seemed unhealthy. When Link was done playing, he stumbled, as if knocked over by something. The glowing aura enveloping him, however, did not move with him. The boy turned around to notice the hazy green image of his silhouette, perfectly outlining him as if he'd never moved. The fuzzy light solidified until there was an exact replica of the hero of time.
Well, almost exact,
Tattle thought. He had the same hair, face, and clothes, but all his items were missing. And the eyes.
Ugh, the eyes are creepy.
They were blue, but they shone as a dead man's would, without intelligence. It took Tattle a moment to realize it was likely a statue, but that didn't make its fake, strained smile any less creepy. This soldier who has no heart is your twin image, Egos said. A shell of yourself that you will shed when the Elegy of Emptiness commands it.
Elegy of Emptiness?
For once, a fitting song title that wasn't too on the nose.
The Tiku Scrubs would have named this song the Sonata of Generating a Statue.
Can it do anything? Link asked.
It can stand there,
Egos said.
Having a shell for each person who plays it will come in handy in more ways than you think.
Right.
Tattle cut in.
Whatever you say.
She turned back to the boy, looking between him and the strange, rather scary statue.
We can't call it Link, though, so how about Ben?
Ben? Link asked, laughing. What kind of name is that? Tattle shrugged.
I don't know. An appropriate one for such a dweeby-looking statue.
The fairy turned back to the king's floating head.
Thank you very much, Egos to Ikana. We'll do our best to use it wisely.
On my kingdom, shine the light of justice,
Egos declared, solemnly bowing a final time. The boy paused before leaving. He turned away from the statue she'd named Ben to the bodiless man once named Danil. Can I ask you for one more favor? Do you have a bag that's less awkward to carry? And maybe some arrows? Oh, and how about a bath too, to wash off all the soot and blood? When they stepped out of the ancient castle of Ikana, it was just past midday. The sky was as clear as every third day before it, sun shining ceaselessly on the old, weathered ruins around them. The pale blue wall separating them from the music box house was still there, as was the haunting music. The new bag around his shoulders was brown and much more comfortable, identical to his former container, except it had more pockets. Thank Nehru, Link thought. Whether crafted by mortal means or magic, he would never know, but it made no difference to him. It had been surprisingly easy for Egos to Ikana to find a new one, and all the masks and weapons he lost under the well made it lighter. He now only had 7 masks, and the king had replenished his food, water, and arrows. The last leg of their journey was here.
That way?
The white fairy asked, pointing to a wall in the back right corner. They hadn't noticed it coming in, but along the canyon wall there was a crevice. Egos had given them directions. It should snake through a passageway that would lead them to Stone Tower.
The last temple. The last giant.
Yep, Link said, starting in that direction. Tattle, as always, followed. So, that was a lot to process. He kept his mind clear as they walked, waiting to see what his fairy said first. It would take a long time for them to figure out the meaning behind the Grey Witch's words.
Well, I really had a question I wanted to ask her,
Tattle said. Link recognized her sarcastic voice and played along. What was it?
I wanted to know what would happen if you looked at her eye of truth with your mask of truth,
Tattle said.
Or even better, if both eyes of truth had looked at each other through the lens of truth. I mean, the world would have exploded, right? It would tear a hole in the universe. We'd all be sucked in, and the realms of time and space would have devolved into absolute chaos.
I guess that'd be one way to stop Majora, Link said, laughing. And killing everyone else in the process.
I know you're acting like it's ridiculous,
the fairy said.
But she freaked out when you almost did it, so clearly something crazy would have happened.
Maybe just a crazy headache, Link suggested.
Ah, come on now, hero of time. You're one of the only people in the world who's been time traveling. Has that done nothing to encourage your imagination?
Why would time traveling make me more imaginative? Link asked, as they passed between the crevices of rock. The sunlight was blotted out momentarily as they went through a narrow brown cave.
I mean, you are a 50-year-old trapped in a young boy's body, right? There's more than meets the eye rattling around in that head of yours.
I don't know about 50, Link said. Are you still skeptical about gods and magic and stuff? Even after all we've seen since Woodfall?
Tattle began, stammering. I stand by my opinion. Gods did it isn't really a good explanation for anything. Magic doesn't just happen inexplicably. There's a science to it.
She shrugged again, flying low in the small cave space they had.
If the gods are real, I bet they're a part of science too, and would bet on them being tyrants and assholes.
Tattle, Link said pejoratively. You could go to prison for saying something like that in Hyrule.
Which proves my point,
Tattle said.
Tyrants.
Tyrants wouldn't help us fight evil.
That's why there has to be another explanation beyond gods. I don't trust authority. Things like your hookshot, your masks, and the dancing redeads seem random and impossible, but they're not. I'm all about the fantastical and not robbing the world of its mysteries, but let's not reduce something really complex to something so simple.
Maybe, Link said uneasily. I still don't see why praying to gods takes mystery away from the world.
Tattle smiled.
Don't read too much into what I said. After all, it's a really deep question, and I'm just a silly little fairy. My expertise is being a jerk, not philosophy.
The cave eventually opened up to a road a lot like the ones before. It was wide, brown, and bordered by canyon walls, leading directly toward the far-off tower that had been visible since Termina Field.
The last road,
he thought. Link took his first step. The distant temple grew closer with every second.
What'd you think about the Termina stuff?
Link asked, finally emboldened to address the Lionel in the room.
About the Tree of Light.
Tattle shifted uneasily, as if she dreaded the shift in topic.
She didn't really give us answers. You asked her what Termina was, but maybe that was the wrong question. You should have been more direct about the Tree of Light. Doesn't it seem a little odd that a tree created an entire realm of people that are shadows, shades that are dead or alive from other worlds, roaming about aimlessly? Trees don't do that, Link. Has it been around since the dawn of time? Why is it so secretive about its location? Trees aren't supposed to keep secrets either.
Well, the answer to that last one is safety, Link said. Egos to Ikana stole some of its bark, and who knows how badly that hurt it. What would happen if someone evil found it and destroyed it? It's the center of all light magic in the world.
After he said that, Link and Tattle gasped with the same realization.
Majora!
They said.
Do you think he knows about the tree?
Tattle asked.
He might. Using the moon to destroy all of Termina makes a lot more sense. It'd be the perfect way to destroy something he couldn't find.
Oh, Dan.
But we're forgetting something,
Link said.
On that cycle, when the moon fell, a wave of fire washed over all of Termina. The tree should have burned then, taking away my Ocarina's powers. But we still turned back time. That means the Tree of Light can't be in Termina.
You're wrong,
Tattle said.
We survived the moon falling, didn't we?
Link had no way to argue against that.
Why couldn't a tree have survived too?
Tattle asked.
Maybe it's really well hidden and protected, and you playing the Song of Time stopped all that darkness from reaching it.
Tattle paused, collecting her thoughts as they traveled.
We don't need to worry about it, though. Freeing the giants and stopping Majora will still give us the added benefit of protecting the tree. We'll worry about it more if we have to. We don't need anything else on our plate.
I mean, it seems really important.
Yeah, well, this tree doesn't change what I am. I'm still a stupid shadow, just an aimless resident of Termina roaming around without a thought in its head.
She sighed. Link's instinct was to comfort her, but he restrained himself.
We've had this conversation before,
he thought. There was something behind her words, and eventually, he came out.
Link.
Her voice trembled.
Yeah?
About what the Grey Witch said. I was being dead serious. I would never lie to you. I just didn't think... I didn't think that particular secret was worth sharing. You're right. It was awful for her to call me out like that, but...
You don't have to apologize, Tattle, Link said. Everyone's entitled to their secrets. It wasn't the Grey Witch's place.
Link stopped, choosing his next words carefully.
You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, especially if it doesn't relate to our quest. But if you want to talk about it, I'll listen. And no matter what it is, I promise I won't think less of you. A promise,
Link thought. He'd broken his promise to Epona.
But this one's different. This one is one I can keep.
Well...
Tattle said, swallowing nervously.
I think it might have something to do with our quest. Maybe.
She stopped flying, and so Link stopped walking. He braced himself for whatever came out of her mouth next.
It might explain the moon,
she said. Link balked.
The moon?
It still hung in the sky and was far closer to Clocktown than it had any right being. The boy did his best to compose himself.
That's not possible, though.
Of all Terminus mysteries, he realized the moon was one thing he'd accepted without question.
The Skull Kid must have used his magic to summon it, as simply as that.
Tattle couldn't have been involved.
It happened when the Skull Kid took me to the cave.
She paused again, her voice unsteady.
Whenever I think about that day, before I think of him, I think about how scared I was, which is so selfish. The cave, those whispers, everything it said about Termina. I barely cared about the little boy in the face of all that. I've never even mentioned him to you because...
She didn't know how to finish that thought.
At first,
Tattle continued,
the Skull Kid just wanted to show me the truth, the wasteland. But then when we got there, we found a little boy just sitting in the cave.
She stopped, her eyes wide and shining.
The imp said we should bring him along because he was just a trick, that he wasn't real. And we needed one of those tricks with us so another wouldn't come, but they still came, Link. And they still whispered.
She put a hand over her mouth, repressing a sob.
I didn't... The Skull Kid told me he wasn't real, and it didn't matter, that he needed me to kill him for a spell, but even then I wasn't going to do it. But then we saw the ashes and the voices, and they were yelling. Majora was yelling. He said something about a weak, innocent fool spilling the blood of another to finally destroy Termina, to start the final plan. But the Skull Kid said it was just fake. And there was so much screaming,
The vacant, horrified gaze in Tattle's eyes was a familiar one.
I've seen it in myself,
Link thought. His heart fell as Tattle's mouth remained agape, at a loss for words. Then she flew into his arms, grasping his shoulder as she shook.
I killed a little kid,
she said as the tears came.
I killed a little kid, and it's even worse because I pretended it didn't happen. A spell. The most powerful dark magic to summon something that could destroy Clocktown.
She kept shaking, kept trembling, and Link could only hold her. The first emotion he felt was pure, unrelenting anger.
How dare that Grey Witch,
the boy thought.
How dare she try to make Tattle unblock something like that?
His blood smelled,
Tattle said.
So strong. He told me about his house and his family. The Skull Kid kept saying he wasn't real and that I didn't have to worry. But I'm a murderer. I'm a murderer who made herself forget. That's how little I actually care about others.
You're not a murderer, Tattle, Link said firmly. None of that was your fault. Majora, the Skull Kid, they wanted to terrify you, that's all.
They wanted to summon the moon and needed me to kill a kid to do it.
She left Link's shoulders to wipe her eyes, sighing as she tried to recompose herself.
Look at me. I'm such a mess. I didn't mean to...
You're fine, Tattle,
Link said.
When you bottled me in that first cycle, I was planning on going to the kid's house,
she said, rubbing her eyes.
I wanted to see for myself because I told myself it couldn't be real, that the boy had to be fake, but...
The fairy stopped, taking in a deep breath to steady herself.
But then I saw the moon.
You know where he lives?
Link asked.
His family?
Tattle nodded.
He told me a lot when we were walking through the cave. We were trying to keep our minds away from what was happening until...
She paused, staring off again.
He lived in a small cabin somewhere in the northern half of Woodfall's forest.
Woodfall?
Link asked. You never asked to go by when we were...
I decided I didn't want to know.
Tattle said.
I didn't want to look in their house and see an empty chair at their dinner table. If some nice couple's son was missing, especially if they were waiting for him to come back when...
She couldn't say it again, biting her lip.
That was the question I was terrified of asking Beldam, especially after she brought it up. I guess the first Tattle knew, huh? Because she did leave you and went to the forest.
I guess so, Link said. She didn't talk about where she went, though, so I never learned anything from her.
Nothing?
No, I only knew her for one cycle. Tattle sniffled, finally, seeming to ground herself again. If you ever want to go...
No,
Tattle said, interrupting him.
no. I don't want that. I think I know the answer anyways.
But you don't, the boy said, not breaking eye contact with his fairy.
The moon.
Could have been brought here by a billion other curses. Who's to say what curses can and can't summon moons out of the sky? I mean, it's a moon.
You can't deny I did it. That's what I've been doing every moment until like 10 seconds ago.
Anyone who would know otherwise is dead, Link stated firmly. Now that the Skull Kid is dead, Majora doesn't count, and that old woman doesn't count either. All she can do is play tricks after sitting in that chair hiding from skeletons for who knows how long. Besides, we already talked about how much old woman hates you. Of course she's going to mess with you. Tattle wiped away another fallen tear. And Tattle, even if you did do it, I wouldn't think any less of you, because I know how terrifying Majora can be. And the whispers, and everything else messed up in this realm. That's what we're fighting to destroy. You're the last person to blame. Whoever ended up being real or not real on the other side of that cave. The fairy's smile was deeper and more genuine than Link had seen in a while.
Look at us,
she said, gesturing to the two of them with her blackened arm.
Emotional wrecks. What a depressing adventure. A kid killer and a demon-possessed boy.
Link winced, but Tattle was quick to chime in again.
It's okay, Link. I've forgiven you for hurting me.
He hesitated. Really?
Yeah, you just listened to my murder confession without judging me. We're two magic beans in a pod, the most messed up pair of heroes there ever was.
Despite it all, Link smiled. I guess there's something sweet about that.
Yes. Who knew the answer to us connecting again was to embrace our shared depravity and bloodlust?
Link's smile faltered. You're joking, right? Tattle rolled her eyes.
Yes, Deku Head, I am joking.
I'm all here for forgiveness, but my preference would be to not blow up any more houses or kill any more kids. Tattle raised an eyebrow. For a moment, Link worried he'd pushed his joke a little too far, but his fairy merely shrugged.
If you insist, I'll save my next murderous rampage for when we have another falling out.
Tattle.
Look, unhinged is all I've got. Unless you've got 10,000 rupees stashed away for me to talk to a caretaker, it's gonna take a lifetime for us to heal past all this.
Link's smile returned. He took a deep breath, reveling in the warm, soothing balm of their shared tension finally melting away. Well, here's to having that lifetime to heal. A chance to live beyond all this awfulness.
I can't wait, Link,
Tattle said, sincere. Then they walked to the stone tower together.